welcome to our first of a series of videos that are talking about how to rebuild your body postnatally. So I work with a lot of new mums that might be on their first baby, second baby, third baby. I also work with a lot of ladies that might be 20 years down the line postnatally, still working on issues that were caused probably during their pregnancy to start with. So this series of videos is basically going to talk through all the changes that your body might have had through pregnancy and how we can really work on it to get your body feeling the way you want it to. Because having a baby does not mean that you need to give up on your core, to give up on your pelvic floor, to give up on all those activities and exercises that you might want to do. We can get you feeling the fittest and strongest version of yourself now. So on this video, I'm just going to give you an introduction in regards to kind of what has changed, how it's changed, why it's changed, and then in all the series videos coming up, we'll talk about them all individually in a little bit more detail. So the first thing to remember when we've had a baby is obviously we have to grow this baby inside of us. Stuff is going to have to move to make it fit in, which is absolutely fine because otherwise we would not have our darling little beings with us at home. So when our baby is growing, stuff is going to start moving around, not only in our core but in our pelvis as well, to make room for that baby. And one of the first things that happens is our abdominals are going to start to stretch. These muscles are going to start to stretch to allow the baby to grow. This happens through a lot of different ways, but there's a hormone called relaxin that is released into our bodies that you might have heard of that loosens the ligaments, loosens the tendons, loosens the muscles to allow them to stretch. So not only will the muscles and tendons and ligaments start to stretch, but you'll also notice that your pelvis probably has started to stretch when you're pregnant, and that can sometimes lead to a little bit of instability in your joints as well, because now everything's a little bit more loose. Now, the reason I say this is because if we just look at the abdominals themselves, and we just look at those muscles that we like to refer to as our six-pack muscles, also known more officially as our rectus abdominal muscles, they quite often will separate during pregnancy. And I say quite often, like 99% of the time they're going to separate. So your six-pack muscles sit like two tram lines down the centre of your stomach, and they kind of have their bulges along the way. Obviously for those that have very defined six-pack muscles. When we are pregnant, the joining tissue between these two lines of tissue called the linea alba is going to stretch. So your muscles will go from being two tram lines here to start to stretch, and they quite often end up in a bit of kind of a circle there as well. And I said that the connective tissue is going to stretch to allow baby to come. When we have had the baby, and obviously the baby's no longer in our stomach, naturally it should start to close back up a little bit. But the speed at which it closes back up and how far it closes back up is very individualized to you. Some of it is genetics, some of it is your training, some of it is your rehab that you've done as well, some of it is just potluck. But when we're looking at kind of rebuilding our body, and a lot of the clients that I work with, they aesthetically feel that they've still got what they call as a mummy tummy. There feels like there is a bulge left here in the centre, but they also feel a lot of weakness there as well. And quite often if they sit up or try to sit up in bed, they can actually see either what we call doming or recess in the centre of the abdomen as well. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, because it's something you might have heard of and you might not. And that is called diastasis recti, DR for short. And it is basically the gap. So if those abdominals, your rectus abdominal muscles, do not come back in like this and they stay more open like this, that separation is what the DR is. Now, there will always be a little gap between these two muscles, and that is absolutely fine. There can be a big gap between these muscles, and for other people that is still fine because there is tension in the linea alba that joins them, so it's still one big tense muscle just joined with more connective tissue. But for others, the rectus abdominal muscle stays separate, and this connective tissue, and instead of being stretched and taut during pregnancy when you got the bump in there, or the baby in there, it's now going to be loose, and it's the looseness which is actually causing the problem, because now from a pressure point of view, that kind of connective tissue is now a bit flappy, and that is allowing this doming to happen here, can allow it to feel like you've got this mummy tummy going on. So the first thing what we're going to do in this video is just assess whether you have diastasis recti, because if I keep talking about it and we don't assess it, you're going to be wondering whether you got it. So let's just get it done and dusted. So the way that we check this, and this does not matter whether you're 6 weeks postnatal, 6 years postnatal, or 26 years postnatal, okay? It's good to know whether you have it. So the way we're going to assess this to start with is we're going to lie on our backs. So just get yourself something soft to land on. We're going to lie on your backs here. We'll just make sure I'm in camera. Lovely. You're gonna have your heels up towards your bum slightly, and you're just gonna let yourself naturally just find where you want to fall onto the floor. So for some people, there'll be a little gap under the back here, but just naturally just sit where you want to sit. So what we're thinking is that, remember, we've got these two tram lines of muscles coming down our abdomen, and there's this gap in the middle, and that's what we're trying to assess. Now, with diastasis recti, we measure it using our fingers, because we measure it in centimetres, and one finger is 1 centimetre on the measurements. What I want you to do is take your middle finger, find the middle of your stomach, so you find your belly button if you're struggling to find what we're talking about here, and I want you to come up towards your ribs. And what I want you to do is just push down gently between what will be your six-pack muscles, your rectus abdominis. I want you to lift your head up, and I want you to see what happens to your finger. So what you should find, even if you have no bad diastasis recti, you should find that there still feels like your middle finger can probably just push down a little bit. It feels like there's a little bit of tension either side. That is your six-pack muscles pushing against it. Now, if you have diastasis recti, which is going to be about 2 centimetres more gap, one finger might just want to sink into your abdomen. So try 2, and just again lift the head up and see if you can sink 2 fingers in between that gap. Now, it can vary from the top of your abdomen here to right down here, where the whole row of abdominal muscles sit. So I want you to test up here. I want you to test above your belly button. I want you to test just below your belly button, and then right down on your kind of knuckle line as well. Because what you might find is it's very closely joined up here, it might be very closely joined at the bottom, and in the middle you might find that you're fitting 2 fingers or maybe 3 fingers in. You're gonna need to push quite firm, okay? So have a go again. So we're gonna lie down, fingers to the center of your body, start finding where you feel like there might be a bit of a gap, and then lift your head, okay? Push down, obviously don't hurt yourself, and if you feel there's a really big gap, just be gentle, and just find if there's anything there. Now, if you're doing this and you can't figure out what I'm trying to tell you, the chances are you don't have diastasis recti, okay? I have felt DR on many ladies' tummies before, and it's actually quite obvious once you go looking for it. You feel fine, then suddenly it feels like your fingers just want to go in, and there's no resistance against them. That is DR. So have a check. Now, if you're finding that you can almost fit like 3 fingers in, maybe 4 fingers in to a gap in your stomach, don't worry about it. You probably do have DR. It's probably worth you going to see a medical professional. Ideally, a postnatal physio would be kind of gold standard. But anyone kind of doctors, GP wise, to assess it, because it might be, if you're years down the line postnatally, you might need to have some more additional support with this if it's causing you issues. But I said it doesn't necessarily have to cause you issues. Now, it's really important to remember on this, just so you stay calm about it, is even people that haven't had babies can have DR. People can get DR from heavy strength training. They can get DR if they've had illness, if they've strained themselves, if they've had a trip or fall. Some people just naturally have it. Men, actually, there's quite a high proportion of men that can get it as well. So it's really kind of, it's not just about pregnancy bodies. It might be you've always had some ab separation there, you never tested it. But if we have got some ab separation there, all it means is we need to really focus on core engagement. Now, to heal this, it's important to now understand another layer of abdominals that we have going on. Your rectus abdominals, these 6-pack muscles, sit very near the surface of our bodies. And really their job is this. Their job is to contract to allow us to sit up. It's the flexion and straightening of the spine is what they do. Underneath them is something called our transverse abdominal muscles, our TRA. That is the way more important group of muscles. They run horizontally around from our backs all the way around to the front, and they join together. They're the ones that really control pressure in our abdomen. They're the ones that hold in all our organs. They're the ones that stop us falling around everywhere and keep us upright. Now, they are the ones that are going to help narrow the gap between these 6-pack muscles. Because as I said, remember, it's the connective tissue between them, which is actually what we need to sort out. We need to get some tension there. Now, that tension might pull the 6-pack muscles back together. It might keep the 6-pack muscles where they are, but it'll create tension within them, so you're still going to have that stability itself. So to build that, we need to make sure those deep TVA muscles are actually doing their job. So the ones that like giving you a hug, wrapping you around. And they too would have stretched during pregnancy. They too would have been a bit more inactive during pregnancy. When you stop being able to do so many things, those muscles haven't been working so hard. So they're the area that we're going to really, really work on. And the transverse abdominal muscles, along with our diaphragm, which is, as you might remember from biology days at school, is the muscle that sits below our lungs, and when it contracts, it comes down and it sucks air in, and then when it relaxes, it comes back up and we breathe out. The transverse abdominal muscles make up a lot of our core muscles, as well as some in the back as well, the erector spina. We also have our pelvic floor, which is like the bottom. So think of like a tin can of baked beans. You've got the transverse abdominal muscles, which is that ribbed kind of can around the outside. We've got our lid, which is our diaphragm, and we've got the bottom, which is our pelvic floor. If you want that cylinder, that can of baked beans, to stay solid and firm, you need all that as a closed entity. As soon as there's a gap somewhere, as soon as one part that's not working effectively, that tin of baked beans can soon be crushed or bent, okay? So we, in the next few videos, are going to really talk about all aspects of our core, because if we want to strengthen our TVA, our transverse abdominal muscles, and we want to get a strong core, we also need to make sure our diaphragm is working effectively at the top and our pelvic floor is working effectively at the bottom, because so much about our appearance in regards to our stomach area, how we feel from a strength perspective in our core area, as well as our pelvic floor function, any leakage, any issues with breathing in regards to kind of, if you find gentle exercise really strenuous, it's going to be linked to all of this. So we want to work all of it at once, not forgetting the impact of our core on our posture and then any related pains. If you're having lower back pain, upper back pain, a lot of it's going to come down to all these different postural things linking together, which is why we can't just work on one, we've got to work on them all. So on the next series of videos, we're going to talk through each of these different elements, from breathing, from glute activation, from pelvic floor activation, to core activation as well. And we can work on all those things. And once they all work together, we've got this 360 kind of cylinder going on for our core. You are then going to noticeably see a big improvement in that mummy tummy, in that strength, in that your fitness abilities, in your capabilities, in your posture, and hopefully in your confidence as well in your own body. So stay tuned for the next videos as we talk through each of those things.